There is a reason the end of the day feels different from every other moment. It's not just fatigue. It's not simply your body signaling that it needs rest. There is something more subtle happening, something psychological, spiritual, and deeply human. When the noise of activity finally fades, you become aware of what has been living inside you all day. The night exposes the truth you were too busy to feel. And this is why I often say the night is not merely a time, it is a gate. It is a transition point where the boundary between your conscious world and your inner life becomes thinner. What you do with that gate determines whether you enter the night with chaos or with clarity. Throughout the day, you are constantly absorbing things. Words spoken to you, decisions you made, uncertainties you pushed aside, expectations placed on you, they settle in the mind like dust. Most people don't realize how much emotional residue they carry by the time the sun sets, but the night has a way of magnifying what you avoided. The silence brings everything to the surface. If you don't intentionally direct your heart at this moment, the day's unresolved fragments begin shaping the atmosphere of your night. And this is why some people lie awake for hours, not because their bodies are restless, but because their spirits are unsettled. What you say, think, and release at the end of the day becomes a spiritual seed planted into your subconscious. This is why certain thoughts follow you into dreams, why certain fears feel louder at night, and why unresolved issues feel heavier once the lights are off. The night amplifies what you have not surrendered. This is also why prayer at night carries a special potency. It is not merely routine, it is alignment. You are standing at the threshold of a spiritual gate, deciding what enters with you and what must remain behind. When you pray before you sleep, you take back authorship of your inner world. You decide what accompanies you into the realm where your conscious defenses are silent. You choose peace over pressure, clarity over confusion, surrender over striving. So when the day comes to an end, remember this: the night will echo whatever you bring into it. Choose carefully. Throughout the day, whether you notice it or not, your inner world becomes crowded. Every interaction leaves an imprint, every responsibility pulls at your attention, and every unspoken worry settles somewhere in the background of your mind. By evening, most people are not just tired, they are internally disorganized. They are carrying emotional fragments, mental clutter, unfinished thoughts, and subtle anxieties that never had a moment to be acknowledged. And this is where the wisdom of ending the day with prayer becomes deeply practical, not just spiritual. Prayer is the conscious act of replacing the noise of the day with divine order. What many people do is try to power through the chaos. They lie down hoping sleep itself will clean the mind, unaware that sleep does not reset what you never surrendered. The truth is, you cannot rest if your inner world is still running. The body may lie still, but the heart continues to race, the mind continues to replay, and the spirit continues to wrestle. Prayer interrupts that cycle. It takes all the scattered pieces of your day and gently gathers them before God. It allows you to look at your emotions without being overwhelmed by them, to acknowledge your fears without being defined by them, and to bring your mind back into alignment with truth. From a psychological standpoint, something profound happens when you articulate your concerns in prayer. Your brain shifts from a reactive mode to a reflective one. You move from emotional chaos to structured thought. And from a spiritual standpoint, prayer opens the door for God to breathe clarity into places where confusion has been quietly growing. Suddenly, what felt complicated becomes simpler. What felt overwhelming becomes manageable. The noise that dominated your inner world begins to lose its authority. There are moments in prayer when you can almost feel the weight lifting, not because the circumstances have changed, but because your perspective has. You remember that you are not alone. You remember that the burden is not yours to carry alone. Prayer restores your sense of grounding. It reminds you that there is a higher order, a greater wisdom, a deeper peace available to you. So when the day closes and the noise tries to follow you into the night, pause and let prayer rearrange your inner world. Because a quiet room means nothing if your soul is still loud. There is a misunderstanding many people carry about peace. They treat it as an emotion, something that rises and falls based on how predictable or comfortable life feels. But true peace is not emotional, it is spiritual. It is not something you manufacture by trying to calm yourself down. It is a presence that enters when you create space for it, and this presence has a weight, a stillness, a quiet authority that settles everything within you. You can always tell the difference between emotional calmness and genuine peace. Emotional calmness can be disrupted by a single thought, a single notification, a single memory. But when peace is a presence, it is almost tangible. It wraps around your mind like a protective layer. It stills the internal noise that words cannot reach. It gives you the ability to acknowledge reality without being swallowed by it. That kind of peace is not the result of perfect circumstances. It is the result of divine companionship. Throughout the day, you can move through different emotional states: excitement, frustration, uncertainty, joy, disappointment. But when night comes and the world becomes quiet, your inner state becomes more honest. Whatever is unresolved inside you begins to speak more loudly. And this is precisely why peace is so essential before sleep. Without it, the night becomes a battlefield. Thoughts accelerate, fears magnify, small concerns adopt larger shadows. The absence of peace makes the mind a restless place. But when peace enters your room, it changes the atmosphere. You sense a calm that does not depend on how the day went. You become aware of a presence that holds you, steadies you, and reassures you in ways the mind alone cannot comprehend. Even if the situation around you has not shifted, something inside you has. Peace gives you the inner permission to rest without fear that life will collapse while you sleep. It reminds you that you are guarded. Philosophically, peace is alignment. It is the harmony between your spirit and truth. Psychologically, it is the regulation of the inner system. Spiritually, it is the awareness that you are not abandoned. When these three dimensions meet, the result is a rest that goes beyond sleep. So tonight, don't just ask for quietness, invite peace. Because when peace becomes the presence in your room, the night loses its power to trouble you. Gratitude is one of the most underestimated spiritual technologies available to the human heart. People often treat it as a polite gesture, a positive mindset, or a moral virtue. But in the economy of the spirit, gratitude is far more powerful. It is a force that rearranges your internal atmosphere. It shifts your focus from what is missing to what has been sustained. And when the day ends, this shift becomes essential, because your heart naturally gravitates toward what went wrong, what wasn't completed, or what still feels uncertain. Gratitude interrupts that cycle and redirects you toward truth. When you pause at night and deliberately acknowledge the goodness that carried you through the day, something begins to happen inside you. The tension in your chest loosens, the pressure in your mind softens. You stop seeing the day through the lens of frustration, and you begin seeing it through the lens of grace. Gratitude doesn't change the events of the day, but it changes the interpretation of those events. And interpretation is often what determines whether your heart rests or wrestles. Psychologically, gratitude has the power to soothe the nervous system. It brings the mind back into balance, reminding it of the resources, opportunities, and small mercies that were easy to overlook. Emotionally, it creates space, room for joy, room for calm, room for clarity. Spiritually, gratitude aligns your heart with humility. It pulls you away from entitlement and returns you to dependence, the healthy kind, the trusting kind, the kind that opens the door for peace to flow. Many people go to bed carrying the weight of what they think they lacked. They focus on what didn't happen, what was delayed, what was disappointing. But gratitude closes the day with a different narrative. It says, even if everything didn't go my way, something carried me, something protected me, something sustained me. And that acknowledgement alone is enough to quiet a restless spirit. When you practice gratitude before sleep, you invite rest in its purest form. Not the rest of exhaustion collapsing, but the rest of perspective returning. You end the day recognizing that progress was made, strength was given, and grace was present even in the imperfect moments. So as the night draws near, take a moment to whisper your thank yous, because gratitude is the doorway through which peace enters and stays. There is a point in every human journey where strength becomes insufficient, not because you are weak, but because you were never designed to carry everything alone. One of the greatest reasons people lose sleep is not the difficulty of life itself, but the silent expectation that they must solve, manage, and control every detail without help. This silent pressure creates an invisible weight, mental, emotional, and spiritual, that follows them into the night. And this is where surrender becomes not a sign of defeat, but a profound act of wisdom. Surrender is often misunderstood. People imagine it as abandoning responsibility or giving up on solutions. But true surrender is not the absence of effort, it is the release of unnecessary ownership. It is acknowledging that some things are beyond your ability to control and therefore must be placed in the hands of the one who sees further than you, understands deeper than you, and loves you stronger than you. When you surrender in prayer at the end of the day, you are not escaping reality. You are aligning with truth. Think about how the mind works. When you hold onto too many unresolved concerns, it tries to solve them repeatedly, even when you lie down to rest. That is why your thoughts begin racing at night. That is why your heart feels heavy even when the room is quiet. The mind becomes a battlefield because you are asking it to fight alone, but surrender shifts the responsibility. It allows your mind to breathe again. The internal noise begins to settle when you say, "This is no longer mine to carry." Spiritually, surrender is a form of trust. It is declaring that you believe God can handle what you cannot. Psychologically, surrender is a release valve. It lowers the internal pressure that accumulates throughout the day. Emotionally, surrender creates space for peace to enter. It empties the heart of burdens that drain its ability to rest. And the interesting thing is this: the moment you surrender, clarity often follows. Solutions become visible, strength returns, fear loses its grip, not because the problems disappeared, but because your soul is no longer crushed beneath them. Every night gives you a choice: carry the weight or release it. And the truth is simple: what you surrender cannot suffocate you. There is a dimension of your spiritual life that many people underestimate: the authority of your own voice. There are atmospheres that will not shift until you speak, thoughts that will not quiet until you command them, and fears that will not retreat until you declare their end. Your night is not just a passive experience. It is a territory that responds to what you say. And many people go to bed silently defeated simply because they never spoke peace into their environment. The truth is, words shape atmospheres. They influence your emotions, they guide your thoughts, and they carry spiritual weight. This is why, before sleep, the declarations you make matter. When you speak intentionally over your night, you are not indulging in positive thinking. You are establishing order. You are creating boundaries for your mind and spirit. You are deciding what is allowed to follow you into rest and what must remain outside. Think of it this way: your mind has been active all day, absorbing impressions, responding to situations, adapting to pressures. By evening, it is in a vulnerable state, more open, more impressionable. If you allow silence to be filled by whatever thought chooses to wander in, you give room for fear, guilt, regret, and anxiety to dominate. But when you speak, when you declare peace, clarity, protection, and rest, you reclaim authority over your inner world. You instruct your mind on what to focus on. You silence the enemies of your peace by giving your soul a different narrative. From a psychological point of view, verbalizing truth before sleep disrupts negative mental loops. It activates the part of your brain that organizes thoughts instead of merely reacting to them. Spiritually, your declarations open the door for divine presence to fill your room, creating an atmosphere where fear cannot thrive. Emotionally, speaking peace prepares your heart to let go. There is a sacredness to saying, "Tonight my mind will rest. Tonight my spirit is secure. Tonight I am covered." These are not empty words, they are spiritual instructions. They shift the atmosphere from tension to tranquility. And the beauty is this: you don't need a long speech, you don't need dramatic expressions, you simply need conviction. Because the night obeys the voice of the one who chooses to speak with authority.